President Trump and Kim Jong Un do have a relationship. I don't think they talk frequently. However, they have met face to face. They have communicated with each other. Their teams have communicated with each other. So President Trump certainly throwing that out there. I think in many ways the ball might be in North Korea's court.
Donald Trump says he wants to meet the North Korean dictator, Kim Jong Un. The US president's currently in Japan meeting Emperor Naruhito, the latest stop on his Asia diplomacy tour. There are reports this afternoon too of a possible breakthrough in trade talks with China. But closer to home, there's a lot going on here. A fifth of the US Navy has gathered in the Caribbean amid an ongoing standoff between the United States and Venezuela. Well, we're joined now by Julia Manchester, White House reporter for The Hill. Julia, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to see you guys.
Should we start with some of the positive news? At least we're hearing some encouraging news from the US that at least some kind of framework has been agreed now between the US and China for a trade deal which might end this potential escalating global trade war.
Absolutely. I mean, President Trump is set to meet with Chinese leader Xi Jinping later this week while he's in Asia. So I'm sure we'll get more details then. But look, this has been an ongoing trade war for quite some time, and that has been ratcheted up by President Trump himself by essentially throwing these, wide-ranging tariffs on China. A few weeks ago here in the U.S., we saw the Australian Prime Minister and his delegation come, and we saw that the U.S. and Australia signed a rare earth minerals deal. Obviously, rare earths are very important and crucial to building a number of kinds of technologies. And that was definitely in response to China seeking to become a major player on rare earth minerals. So I think you're seeing both countries, meaning the U.S. and China, seeing a bit of a realignment in the face of these tariffs and maybe trying to find some common ground. That being said, though, and even though it is very good news that we seem to be inching towards a trade deal, I don't think we're out of the woods with China yet. I think there's going to be trade disputes, particularly during a Trump administration, for months and years to come with China.
Yeah, and we often get, don't we, with the White House, these very sort of positive, effusive declarations, and we've got to see the detail a little bit later in this week. From trade deals to potential peace deals, Donald Trump has been telling the world so far on this trip that he has already secured, and that peace deals actually are his hobby, a peace agreement between Thailand and Cambodia. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, we see that President Trump has, essentially presided over, the signing of that peace deal, which, took place in Asia. And it's one of, I think, 7 that he's touted during his administration. It's certainly not a major one. We know the major ones we are watching are Ukraine and Russia, and of course, Israel and Hamas. But President Trump is trying to tout himself as a peacemaker in chief. And I think he's using these so-called peace deals with countries like Thailand and Cambodia to, bring that to the table when it comes to negotiations, with Ukraine and Russia, and maybe in terms of holding the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas.
Yeah, well, I mean, Donald Trump did literally tell reporters this week that making peace deals is a hobby. I mean, how credible is this specific claim to have secured peace? Because Thailand's foreign minister refused to call it exactly that, a peace agreement, saying it was sort of a pathway to peace.
I mean, look, there's a lot of questions over that. To be frank, I haven't covered this deal in particular. But I think there's going to be critics that will certainly question the legitimacy of it. I don't think it's getting nearly as much play here in the United States. In fact, we're not even talking about that peace deal, to be quite frank. I think Americans are more concerned about the trade implications of this trip, and also, a potential meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong Un. Potential meeting between Trump and Kim Jong Un would certainly, I think President Trump would try to add that to his what he would say a resume of peacemaking. Not saying he's going to make a peace deal with North Korea, but he wants to be seen as a negotiator, a mediator in a global sense.
So there's currently no meeting scheduled, is there? But Donald Trump has said he would extend his trip to make it happen. How likely, if you're reading the room, do you think it is, Julia, that would actually come into fruition?
I would say at this moment, relatively unlikely, but we really don't know what's happening behind the scenes. Unlike with past U.S. presidents, Kim Jong Un and President Trump have from what we've seen, even though they've certainly gone toe to toe. And we know that President Trump's 2019 meeting with him, which was historic, did not result in many, much meaningful progress in terms of denuclearization. We know that President Trump and Kim Jong Un do have a relationship. I don't think they talk frequently. However, they have met face to face. They have communicated with each other. Their teams have communicated with each other. So President Trump certainly throwing that out there, I think in many ways the ball might be in North Korea's court.
Yeah, so we'll see. And that trip sort of scheduled to take place for the next few days at the very least. Away from peace, though, it's being reported that Venezuelan officials believe Donald Trump wants to overthrow the Venezuelan government. Can you tell us what's going on?
So this all has to do with the buildup and I should say building presence of U.S. warships and a U.S. military presence in the Caribbean and off the coast of Venezuela and South America. The president and his administration is framing this as the United States essentially, taking on drug cartels, and they are framing or depicting Nicolas Maduro, the leader of Venezuela, as essentially being the leader of a massive drug cartel organization. And they say this is a national security issue for the United States because there is drug smuggling into the United States, particularly through the Caribbean, into states like Florida, et cetera. So that's their argument. However, the Venezuelans are arguing this is all about regime change and the United States pushing for regime change in Venezuela. Now, with the President Trump and, also someone like Secretary of State Marco Rubio himself, the son of Cuban immigrants. Obviously, this is personal to him when it comes to regime change in the area. I think there is, a portion of the Republican Party that would like to see that happen in Venezuela. However, at the same time, there has been pushback here in the United States over the legality of some of these strikes we've seen in the Caribbean and the, potential strikes against Venezuela. So a lot unknown at this point, but it seems that we are inching closer to some sort of a conflict or some sort of a head in this tension between Caracas and Washington.
Yeah, when you see a fifth of the US naval assets, it's estimated to be currently in the region. Thank you very much, Julia, for explaining so many complex topics as part of this trip, this diplomatic tour that Donald Trump is taking in Asia. Julia Manchester there, the White House reporter for The Hill.